We're at the Physios in Sport Conference 2022, and we're joined by a couple of the panel, and we're just going to hand them over to introduce themselves before we go ahead and ask them a few questions.
Hi, so I'm Dr. Kim Gregory. I'm a consultant in sports and exercise medicine. I work in the NHS at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham and also over in Leicester. And in terms of parasport, I work with the England disability football squads. I've been to 3 Paralympic Games, having just got back from Beijing.
Thank you. My name's Paul Martin. I had a job as technical lead physio for Paralympic sport, and now that's termed athlete lead within the English Institute of Sport, and I've been working in Paralympic sport since 2003.
So the first question I had was, what lessons did you learn from 2012 or other Olympic experiences that have stuck with you the most?
Lessons from 2012. I think the key thing I learnt from that was plan an exit strategy, because I was exhausted and it was the first time I'd really felt fatigue at that level. And within 3 or 4 days I had to go back to work in other spaces. It was a very emotional and very intense period, which was massively exciting. And as a result, you just ended up absolutely drained by the end of it. And I think the thing I learned from that was just make sure you know what you're doing afterwards and plan that properly.
I think for me, because of where I was in the stage of my career in 2012, I learned that parasport was where I wanted to be. I think that was the biggest take home, was that I really love parasport. I love the challenges it brings with it, and seeing that grow and see parasport grow with the coverage. It was like, yes, this is for me, and thankfully my career has now taken that direction.
Yeah, that's great. And then the question that I wanted to ask was, if you had to pick one element to para or sports physiotherapy in general that you think needs improvement, what would it be?
I just need a bit of time.
There's nothing wrong with a bit of thinking time.
Oh, okay. Needs changing.
Or improving.
I think it's quite hard for me to say as a doctor rather than as a physio, but I think it would be to continue to improve communicating and developing opportunities to work within an MDT environment with those people, and learning from those from other specialties that have got a similar interest. So doesn't necessarily need to change, it just needs to continue, grow and develop.
Yeah, I think something that would be nice would be a development at grassroots level to allow people the experiences of working within parasport at a grassroots level, because currently within a lot of sports there's a little bit of something and then you're straight into the elite, and it's difficult to get experience in that space. I think if there was a development of grassroots so that people could get some experience treating and working with different athletes with a disability or impairment, that's going to stand them in better stead to then move through the system.
So the sort of theme of tonight was looking back at London 2012, and whenever London 2012 was on, we were first year in school, so we were wee cubs. I suppose whenever we were looking at the Olympics, I remember the big thing was legacy, and the legacy of the games, and there was a huge drive for maybe six to 12 months after the games, where it was a government thing, but it was in all sports. I feel like that is more or less dead, or it's certainly not, it hasn't been sustained. And I think us as sort of healthcare professionals, and you very much fall into this as a doctor as well, a lot of what we do is about improving health and lifestyle as much as it is very specific sports. How can we influence the legacy of games going forward, both in Olympic and Paralympics?
That's a really interesting point that you make. I think when we look at legacy of games, I think London probably did an awful lot more than most other games do. If you look at what was left in Athens, you've got an awful lot of money spent on some pretty rotten bits of architecture now. Beijing has started, obviously from 2008, they've used a lot of those facilities in the Winter Games in what became the Water Cube, which was just a phenomenal space, was then the Ice Cube. We've got the Olympic Stadium, which is now a football stadium but still doubles up as an athletics track. We've still got the swimming pool. We've still got the copper box. There's a massive park. In terms of infrastructure, the legacy has been fantastic. In terms of was it going to improve the nation's health, an awful lot of the stuff that came out immediately afterwards tended to suggest that people were more overawed by people's performances and found it difficult to equate what they were able to do with that. And I think maybe that's where a bridge needs to be built, that trying to demonstrate that these are kind of unique performers in a certain space. You can be the best that you can be. Don't expect to be Alistair Brownlee, because he's a bit good at that sort of thing. If you can just, take what you can from these things, be inspired by it and try and apply it to yourself. You don't have to achieve to that level. No one's expecting people to do that. If you do, great. But in terms of a public health movement, I think setting expectations is probably going to be the better legacy.
But I think also leading on from that, Alistair Brownlee once was a novice. So everybody starts off at novice level. It's about engaging in physical activity, doing something you enjoy. If you become good at it, you can then hopefully progress, and hopefully you're bringing it back to Birmingham 2022. That's another big sports event in this country, and in between those two we've had Glasgow 2018 as well. So I think it's about utilising these opportunities. I know Birmingham is actually very proactive in terms of becoming an active city. It's looking at integrating not just across sport, but thinking about your parks, your transport infrastructure, encouraging people to be more physically active, full stop. And I think that's where it's going to be really important and reignite that legacy.
Yep.